There is a player who got a challenge on the European West server with an incredible 64% win rate playing only Shen without a duo partner. He also reached rank 3 with 1100 LP on the EU Northeast server in Season 7. He has 1.7 million mastery points with his chosen champion. And he has also gotten challenger while playing on a laptop during his military service. A ton of you guys have requested him as a guest, so I am super excited to have Petu join us and share some secrets for Shen.
Hey RTO, thanks for having me on your Top Lane Academy series. I'm glad I get to shed some light on Shen top lane for a wider audience.
So why have you been able to get to such a high level with Shen and sustain it for so long?
One of the main reasons why I can play Shen at such a high level is my map awareness. If something is happening on the map, chances are I know about it. As Shen, you need to adapt a very specific mindset. If someone dies and your ultimate is up, that death is your fault. You should have been watching, and most likely you could have saved that teammate.
Hello everyone, I'm Petu, a Shen main with over 1 million mastery points in total. I've reached Challenger in Europe West and Europe Nordic East, and had over 1000 LP in Season 7. I started maining Shen when he got reworked in 2016, because his playstyle and abilities felt very satisfying to me. This is a guide by me and Shending Help, the highest ranked Shen main this season. He has around 1.3 million mastery points on Shen. The guide is split into two parts, this video and Shending Help's matchup document, which contains specific tips for every top lane matchup. The purpose of this project is to share everything we have learned about Shen over thousands of games in high elo. So, why should you play Shen? Well, for starters, Shen is currently in a strong spot balance-wise, but he is not a contested pick. He's one of the more fun to play tanks in my opinion, and his kit has a certain kind of fluidity to it. His playstyle is almost more comparable to a bruiser than a tank. Playing Shen teaches you map awareness and the importance of cross-map plays. Shen fits into almost every team comp because of his flexibility. He can fill multiple roles in a teamfight. He can engage like a tank, peel like a support, or assassinate carries like a bruiser. Shen is a good champion to main because of his high skill ceiling, but you can also add him to your champion pool because of his moderate skill floor. On top of all that, his appearance and design is cool. I mean, who doesn't like a dual-wielding ninja? Alright, let's start with Shen's abilities. Q, Twilight Assault. Shen pulls his Spirit Blade to his location, and once it arrives, he gains 3 empowered basic attacks for the next 8 seconds, and 75 bonus attack range for the duration. If you pull that blade through an enemy, the effects of Twilight Assault are enhanced. The enemy is slowed, the empowered attacks do more magic damage, and Shen gains 50% bonus attack speed. This is Shen's core ability, it's his primary damage source and way to move the Spirit Blade. As Shen, you're always trying to pull the blade through enemy champions. I'll explain more about this later on in the video. W. Spirit's Refuge. Shen primes his Spirit Blade and creates an area around it that will activate after 2 seconds or if an allied champion walks in it. When active, the protective zone blocks all enemy basic attacks targeted at allied champions. This includes any on-hit effects or spells that count as basic attacks, like Ezreal's Q. Shen's W might be hard to use correctly at first, but when mastered, it's an extremely potent ability that can turn around fights. E. Shadow Dash. Shen's E has a passive and an active. Passively, Shen recovers energy when dealing damage with his Q or E. The active is a dash that deals physical damage and taunts enemy champions or monsters for 1.5 seconds. It can cross terrain and can be combined with flash for lightning fast engages. More on this later in the video. Ultimate, Stand United. Shen's ultimate is a global teleport. He shields an ally champion and channels for 3 seconds. After channeling, Shen and his Spirit Blade blink to the target ally. The shield scales based on the target's missing health and can last for up to 5 seconds. Stand United is Shen's identity. His playstyle revolves around saving teammates from across the map like a superhero. This guide has a dedicated section to efficient use of this ability, so watch till the very end. Passive, Key Barrier. Shen gets a shield that lasts for 2.5 seconds after using an ability. Key Barrier has a flat 10-second cooldown, and it's reduced every time you affect at least one champion with an ability. This means pulling your blade through someone with Q, using W on an ally, or hitting an enemy with your E, or just casting your ultimate. It's important to note that the shield comes after the triggering ability's effect is finished. So with Q, when the Spirit Blade reaches Shen, with W, when the protective zone disappears, with E, when you finish dashing, and with R, when you complete the teleport. Using your passive efficiently to turn around fights at low health is the key to mastering Shen. Now, for our skill order, we want to max out Q first for a lower cooldown and more damage. We follow it up by maxing E second and leveling your ultimate whenever possible. W will be maxed last because leveling it up only decreases the cooldown by 1.5 seconds per rank. Let's get into our runes. We choose Grasp of the Undying as our keystone. Grasp is a core part of Shen's trading pattern, and it's a must-have if you want to play Shen to his full potential. It gives you some sustain and damage that scales with your maximum health. Utilizing Twilight Assault and Grasp of the Undying together make your short trades extremely potent. Next, we take Shield Bash. It has perfect synergy with Shen's passive and fits well into his trading pattern with Grasp. As our second rune, we choose Second Wind, because it gives Shen some well-needed sustain. It's going to be active almost all the time, regardless of your opponent, because you're always taking trades in melee matchups or getting poked in range matchups. The last rune slot in Resolve has 3 good options, but Revitalize is the most consistent of the 3 for Shen. It increases your passive shields and grasp healing, making low health clutch situations easier to win. It also increases your massive ultimate shield on the ally. Now, our secondary rune tree is going to be Precision because of the following rune. Presence of Mind. This is the best rune on Shen right now, despite the fact that Shen can't make use of the mana restoration. Shen's ultimate has the longest base cooldown of any ability, tied with Cartus and Galio, and on top of that, Shen's build has practically no cooldown reduction, making Presence of Mind a must-have. For example, getting 2 assists with your ultimate at level 6 will reduce the cooldown by a whopping 40 seconds. It's not uncommon to have over 5 minutes of cooldown refunded at the end of a match. Lastly, I take Legend Alacrity, because it's the most consistent rune in the Precision tree and helps with everything from last hitting to taking towers. For stat runes, I opt for the highest gold value at level 1, choosing attack speed, adaptive force, and armor or magic resist depending on your lane opponent's damage type. Alternatively, you can go for Shending Help setup with double adaptive force and scaling health. Experiment with both to see which one works better for you. Let's move on to Shen's items. Your starting item as Shen should always be Doran's Shield. Your first completed item is going to be Titanic Hydra 99% of the time. After Titanic Hydra, you want to finish your boots into either Ninja Tabai or Mercury's Threads. Next, we want to build Randuin's Omen and Adaptive Helm. These 4 items are going to be your core build. For the remaining 2 item slots, you can choose from basically any tank item that doesn't have mana. So, why do you want Titanic? Well, it close to one-shot squishes with Empowered Q into Titanic Reset and another Empowered Q. This is especially important on Shen compared to other bruisers, since he can arrive together with any champ that dives the backline using his ultimate. It clears waves much quicker than Sunfire later on, and it has decent tankiness health-wise. Shen also scales well with health, so out of health, armor, or magic resist, it's best to get health first if you're just getting one of them. But, Petu, don't you become too squishy in a lot of matchups by rushing Tiamat? Yes you do, which is why we usually want to go 2 Ruby Crystals on our first back, which we will later build on into the Titanic. You're not desperate for the wave clear that early on, so building some tankiness for lane is the best move unless you're already winning the lane and can afford the Tiamat as a whole. 2 Ruby Crystals gives as much tankiness as Bami's Cinder would, just lacking the early wave clear, which again, you don't really need yet. So you might ask, but why do we not just get both Titanic and Sunfire Cape then? Well, Titanic already lets you clear waves very fast, so getting Sunfire Cape for additional wave clear is a waste of gold, considering how much better Randuin's Omen is as a tank item. Instead of the small tick damage that will only sometimes be useful in fights, you get reduction to crits, attack speed slow on people that hit you, the active slow that is really good on Shen, both for chasing people down combined with your empowered Q slow, or for peeling your backline properly. Even in games where there's little to no crit, I'd still recommend Randuin's over Sunfire. It's just that good. Let's move on to Shen's trading patterns. The main point that I want you to guys remember here is that you have to position the Spirit Blade up the lane at every chance to get it behind your opponent. Now, let's start with the extended trade. This is the trade pattern you want to use to completely smash most melee matchups. First, you'll position the blade up the lane a bit further than your own melee creeps, and then position yourself so you can drag the blade through the enemy with Q. When you've done that, you actually want to wait a couple of seconds before walking up to trade, to make the Q cooldown start ticking down while still retaining the 3 empowered auto attacks. If your opponent doesn't back off, you just start attacking him, and once you have used the first 3 autos, you want to position yourself basically inside of his champion hitbox, so you can instantly press Q once again and gain 3 additional empowered auto attacks. Depending on the matchup and how the enemy is playing, you can either taunt at the start just to get on the enemy, if he's playing passive, or just walk up to him, if he allows you to, and save the taunt either for a later disengage or to chase him down. Fit in the W when the enemy tries to commit to the trade. Using this trade pattern efficiently should let you win close to every melee matchup from level 3 to 5 with a few exceptions. Next up we have the grasp chop. If you don't already have the blade positioned behind the enemy and they're full or close to full HP, a good way to start to chip away at their health without taking too much damage back is to simply go up for exactly 1 Q auto attack when you have your passive and grasp up. Your auto will make a decent chunk of damage, your shield will block most or all of the enemy's hit back at you, and you will be running back in time to not take too much damage from the enemy creeps. A tip while doing this can also be to stand as close to a bush as you can and run into it straight after you've made your auto attack. That way you'll drop minion aggro even quicker going out of vision. Repeat this process a couple of times and hopefully they'll be chipped down enough to apply the extended trade to either kill them or push them out of lane. Now, we need to push our advantage. If the above 2 steps have been applied correctly, there should be a lot of games where your enemy is much lower than you in health, and that's when Shen is at his strongest. You have the potential to completely deny the enemy from farming if you use your blade to its full potential. Just put it up the lane in front of your melee minions and stand quite far up yourself. Then whenever he walks up for, and he's gonna go for a last hit, you drag the Q through him and walk up and start hitting him. Save your taunt unless you think you can go for the kill. This way the enemy has to decide between either not farming at all or taking a lot of damage every time they go for CS. Of course, you have to be wary of the enemy jungler while punishing the enemy laner like this. Keep a ward up when the enemy jungler could be topside, and think about how you should react when the jungler shows up. Next up, we have Tower Crash Taunt. This trading pattern can be applied versus melee matchups if the wave ends up slow pushing from all your trading, and eventually hits the tower while it's still big. First, you want to just walk up to the enemy and drag your blade through him without attacking him but activating your passive shield. Your goal here is to make your opponent hit you with an auto and drawing all the minion aggro. Right after he does, attack him once with an empowered Q auto attack and then taunt through him away from the tower. If you do these steps in the right way, he'll have taken the damage of all your minions for a little while, 1 empowered Q auto attack and 1 taunt. And on top of that, Grasp of the Undying and Shield Bash. Meanwhile, you've only taken the damage of 1 auto attack, or maybe an ability depending on the matchup, and 1 tower shot. And sometimes you can even get out of the range of the tower before taking the tower shot. And your passive shield will have even blocked around half of that. Alright, this next part is something I get asked a lot. It's how to deal with ranged matchups. It depends on what ranged champ you're against. There's a lot of ranged matchups where you can just taunt in for 3 empowered Q auto attacks and back off, having won the trade. But then there's some where that's not possible. Nico and Kennen, for example. But the key thing in those rough matchups is to keep as much health as you can during the time you're not engaging or actively going for a big trade. You do this by staying out of range of the enemy every time there's no enemy minions low enough that you have to walk forward to last hit them. Even if that means you have to walk super far back, that's okay, as long as the enemy minions are healthy and you're not missing any experience. And when you do have to walk up to farm, utilize your passive shield and W as much as you can to deny their main poke. And if you get pushed in and you're under tower, constantly look for chances to taunt them under tower while they're stuck in an auto attack animation attacking the tower, or you. But try to not make it too obvious when you're gonna go in for the taunt, since a missed taunt will cost you a lot of health. Move as if you're not even thinking about going in, while staying close to them, and then instantly taunt in when they take a step too far and is in the middle of an auto attack. Also, it's optimal in rough ranged matchups to keep your teleport up if possible once you hit level 6, so that you can ultimate away to other lanes and help them without having to sacrifice too many plates or minions while being gone, since you can teleport instantly back to top lane. Now, we're gonna talk about split pushing. After the laning phase, you'll want to begin split pushing. Shen excels at split pushing because he has 2 ways of joining his team: Summoner Spell Teleport and his ultimate. Unlike most people think, the main objective of split pushing as Shen is not to take towers, it is to draw pressure away from your team. Before we start split pushing, we need either teleport or stand united to be off cooldown, so that we can join our team if needed. Presence of mind comes in handy here. Now, I'll briefly explain the core principles of split pushing. Number 1. Current objective. You need to acknowledge what the current objective is and start pushing the opposite side of the map. If it's a neutral objective like Baron, you split push bot lane. If your team is grouping to take bot inhibitor, you split push top lane. You're trying to force the enemies to commit members of their team away from the current objective, so your team either gets the objective uncontested or wins an advantageous team fight. Understanding your team's current objective and eventually win condition is one of the most important skills in League. Number 2. Mirroring pressure. We've all seen it happen. A fed top laner starts split pushing, dies in a 1v3 and complains that their team doesn't do anything. That top laner lacks the concept of mirroring pressure. As a split pusher, it is essential to know when your team has pressure and when they don't. When 4 members of your team are sieging a tower, they have pressure, and you can mirror that by applying pressure on the opposite side of the map, forcing the enemy into a lose-lose situation. When your team is recalling or just randomly scattered across the jungle, they don't have pressure, meaning you shouldn't try to apply pressure either. If you die when your team has no pressure, the enemy doesn't lose anything. In general, the more aggressive your team is, the more aggressive you can be. Number 3. Vision. As Shen, the worst thing you can do is die in a side lane for free, because when you're dead, you can't ult, and when you can't ult, your team is gonna int. To prevent this from happening, you'll want to get ward coverage around your lane. Always buy 1 or 2 control wards when split pushing. This is extremely important. If you don't have space for a control ward, sell your Doran shield. Use your warding totem and control ward to create a line of vision in the jungle. You don't want to extend beyond this line of vision unless you have knowledge of the enemy's positions. Just remember that dying is the last thing you want to do. If hitting the tower puts you at a risk, don't hit it. Following these 3 principles of split pushing will make your Shen gameplay improve immensely. Ulting effectively. In this section of the guide, I'm going to talk about different factors that you have to take into account when pressing your ultimate. First up, map awareness. As Shen, you need to be aware of what is happening on the map. Firstly, you need to look at the minimap constantly, at least once every 5 seconds. This is a general tip and is not specific to Shen. It will improve your gameplay on any champion. The second tip is to move your camera around the map. The minimap gives a whole lot of information, but not everything. To see enemy resource bars, minion health, and abilities being used, you have to look around the map. There are no excuses to keeping your camera centered on your champion all the time. You need to know what everyone on your team is doing, who is in danger and who is safe. This is the key to improving your ults, because you're giving yourself more time to think and make the best decisions. You can either click the map to look around or use the function keys to view your teammates. I've personally rebound my F keys to space for jungle, V for mid, C for AD carry, and X for support. This allows me to quickly check on every teammate with just my thumb, while keeping the rest of my fingers on QWER. Perfect moment. You don't want to ult too early. Often it's better to wait a second after the person you're pinging you're gonna ult goes in, since it's harder for the enemies to disengage once they've committed something to the fight. But obviously, also you don't wanna ult too late, since in many situations there's a risk of the enemy bursting through your ultimate shield before you arrive. Wave management. Ask yourself, do you have teleport to get back to top lane? Have you pushed up the wave to the enemy tower? If neither, is it with high certainty worth it to ult anyway? If not, then save it for a better, more high percentage play. The key to all this is planning ahead. If you know what your goals are with your ultimate, you can set up yourself for good opportunities without losing too much experience or gold. Proactive ultimates. Chat and coordinate with your jungler or mid laner for 4-man bot ganks or dives. To do this as much as you can is major key, because when you go for a planned play, which includes proactively ulting, it's a higher chance of getting kills and objectives from it. Proactive ultimates are a consistent way of snowballing the game as Shen. I get that proper communication is very hard in solo queue, but just try to talk to your teammates. Sometimes they won't listen, sometimes they will. You just have to try. And now, our last tip for effective ultimates as Shen is to maximize the ultimate shield. Stand United's shield maxes out at 40% HP, and Revitalize increases shield to targets below 40% HP. So, keeping this in mind, you should try to ult your target allies at 39% of their maximum HP for maximal efficiency. Newer Shen players might require a calculator for this. Shending Help and I have gathered some tips to improve all of your guys' Shen gameplay. Let's start off with the level 1 bush cheese. In a lot of matchups, you want to try to cheese the opponent if they're leashing their jungler and you're not. You want to do this in the tri brush if you're playing blue side, and in the river brush if you're on the red side. Use your Q first at around 1 minute and 28 seconds, then instantly Q again when it's up. If the enemy walks through the bush, it often lines up so that you get 1 or 2 normal Q out attacks, then you can press Q again through them and get the passive shield as well as 3 empowered Q out attacks. It's written in the separate matchup document which champions you should avoid doing this to, since they'll trade back too hard or all in you. The walk along. In some situations where you're chasing a low health target down a long lane, it's best to just walk alongside them without attacking if your Q is close to coming up. That's because it keeps your character so close to theirs that when you use your Q drag, it will go through them and slow them in addition to getting your 3 empowered Q auto attacks. While instead, if you had auto attacked, you would have stopped for long enough so that your Q didn't get the slow or empowered parts and you miss out on the kill. Leash strat. You wanna use Q at 117, then again at 125, and lastly at 134 for 6 Q auto attacks and 1 tanked hit after your last Q with your passive. The jungler is going to be very happy after getting a leash like this, and you arrive in time for the first CS in lane. Now, let's talk about the taunt flash. Instead of flashing first to get into taunt range of the enemy, you can flash at the end of Shadow Dash to extend its range or change its direction. Using E first, then flashing, gives your opponent less time to react. You can also surprise the enemy completely by dashing away from them, then flashing backwards on top of them. When engaging teamfights, you'll want to taunt as many people as possible. To do this, you should try to taunt through the enemy front line and then flash on top of an enemy carry. The possibilities with Shen's taunt flash are endless, and I advise you guys to practice taunt flashing in the practice tool. Q flashing. Shen's Q gains increased damage and attack speed if you pull it through an enemy. The enemy will also be slowed when moving away from you, making Shen extremely good at chasing enemies. You should always try to position in front of the enemy and move in between auto attacks when chasing. Most of the time, you can guarantee the Q slow by using it on a taunted enemy, but sometimes it's necessary to flash in front of the enemy to get the slow on them. The fastest way to do this is by casting Q first, then flashing to redirect your Spirit Blade's path. This is a trick mostly used by experienced Shen players or one-trick ponies, but it's very easy to do once you learn it. Delaying your taunt. In a lot of instances, keeping the taunt to wait for a better moment is the right move. It can be tempting to use it right away, but unless it's super clear that you need to use it right now to not die or to instantly get the free kill in a fight, I'd recommend keeping it for a second longer. Reasons why. Number 1. The enemy will likely start juking around trying to dodge it, wasting his time while assuring you get closer for an easier taunt. And number 2. The situation can change, so that you realize the best use of your taunt is to, for example, re-engage, instead of the before planned disengage. Using W correctly. A lot of matchups are either won or lost by your W usage. Camille is a good example, where you have to block her auto-attack Q reset to win trades. Another example is Renekton. If you can reliably block his W, you'll always win the lane. Shen's W has some inconsistencies. It blocks all on-hit effects like Nash's Q, Sheen, or Grasp of the Undying, but doesn't stop Conqueror from stacking or Kleptomancy from giving items. A neat little tip is that your W blocks Baron and Rift Herald auto-attacks, but the Dragon's auto-attacks are counted as spells and will not be blocked. Shen's W can be extremely valuable in a late-game teamfight when used correctly. Sometimes you can completely turn around a fight by using your W on top of your carries and blocking high-damage auto-attacks from the enemy marksman or assassin.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. Here we have the Shen skin tier list. Let's start at the bottom. In C tier, we have Yellow Jacket and Blood Moon Shen. These two skins are whack. They don't get you any street cred. I wouldn't recommend playing with these two skins. Now, in B tier, we have Frozen Shen. That skin is icy, it's cool. You know, we can appreciate the Frozen Shen, right? Yeah, we can appreciate the Frozen Shen. In B tier, we have also Warlord Shen, one of my favorites. But you gotta be honest, even though I've played a lot with it, it's kind of whack, you know. He's got this big flag, I don't know what he's doing, like, it's so clunky. But, you know, pick Warlord if you wanna lead your team to victory. Now, also in B tier, this is a controversial one. We're gonna say Infernal Shen is gonna be B tier. Now, Infernal Shen has the possibility to go up to A tier or S tier, but because we have not gotten the chance to play with it yet, we can't say for sure. Now, let's get into the A tier. Or we'll start off Classic Shen. You don't really need a skin to play Shen. If you go in with the classic skin, everyone's gonna know you mean business. Next up, A tier, we have Pulsefire. I mean, you know, this skin is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But for me, personally, the sound effects are kind of annoying. They have this like high-pitch ringing noise with Q and W, and you know, it's kind of too mainstream right now, but it has cool effects, so it's gonna be A tier. And lastly in A tier, we have Taipei Assassin Shen. Now, if you've ever played with or against this skin, you already know what I'm talking about. His Q sound is like this bonk, bonk, bonk sound that annoys your opponents to death. Like, I would use it every game, but my mental state is bit decayed every time I use the skin because I have to listen to about 25,000 bonk sounds. Alright. Now, for the S tier, the best skin, the absolutely one-trick pony, main Shen, I have 1 million mastery point skin. We have Surgeon Shen. This skin, it just cuts through the enemies with precision. And have you seen the footwear? Have you seen the footwear on Surgeon Shen? Like, damn, man. How can you say no to that?
Alright, that's it for the guide. Huge shout out to my man Shending Help for making this guide with me. Check him out on twitch.tv/shending_help. Like this video if you enjoyed it or learned something new. Comment and share if you wanna help me out. If you want more content like this, make sure to subscribe to this channel and follow me on twitch.tv/PetuTheBeast. Thanks for watching and see you guys next time.